Counselor Accents Podcast. Two school counselors who love their jobs. Oh, and they happen to have Southern accents too. Bless their hearts.
I'm Laura Rankford.
And I'm Kim Crumley. And together we are Counselor Accents. I was trying a new accent right there. Counselor Accents. I'm really into the Denmark accent right now.
Okay.
There's a Viking cruise. There's a Viking cruise commercial. And the guy, I'm going to get it down pat so that I can reenact the Denmark. The guy that's the chairman of Viking. And he has this, I don't know. I don't know that accent, but I'm going to do it for you at some point.
Well, the fact you and JC, my husband, you and he are both accent.
In love? Yes.
Yes. But also accent chameleons, where you take on whatever accent you're being.
Whatever accent, which I don't know if I told you. Well, I'm not even going to tell you this. So no, because you wouldn't let me live it down. So, how is your new year going? How's it going? You've been traveling a bit. Not me. I'm still in my hidey hole.
Yes.
My COVID hidey hole.
You've only been out of that hidey hole since to go to Aska.
But I had dinner with Russabella, so it was worth it.
Russabella
wants to name drop. He wants to go eat. I will get on the plane again. Other than that, I'm in my COVID hidey hole.
Yeah. Well, I do have a traveling story.
I love your traveling stories. I'm living vicariously through you.
Okay. We were waiting for a restaurant. Everywhere takes like 4.5 hours to get a table.
I know, because they've got 2 people working now.
Yes. And so we're very patient people, and unless I'm hungry. So I had to pack a snack. But anyway, so we had met up with some friends who just happened to be on a trip in the same place at the same time as we were. And so we met up with them. They have 4 children. And let me say that he is a pastor of a church in another town, and precious people. We love them. And
like this. Precious.
They're so precious. Bless them, Lord, bless them.
Mm-hmm,
anyway, so we're there with the pastor from another town, and their kids are angels. And
yes,
my kids are running around like a coconut has hit them in the head. And all of a sudden I hear this familiar voice yell out, "What in the are they doing over there?" We cannot air this.
Tell me that was not your child.
It was my child. And I walked over there. I said, "What did you just say?" And she looked me dead in the eyes and she repeated it. "What in the are they doing over there?" I said, "We don't say that word." And I told her which word we don't say. And she said, "Okay." And so then throughout the rest of our trip, she was trying out different words. She landed on, "What in the hole are they doing over there?"
The intent was the same. So I still think, if the intent is
exactly.
You've got your hands full.
"What in the Charlie horse are they doing over there?" Like, she tried all kinds of different words. And then landed.
But you were really wanting to impress the pastor. That's when the kid's going to do it, and that they left that dinner going, that is so, they hear, they hear that at home. They hear that at home.
Pray for them.
Because that's what we would say.
But I will say that these pastor friends of ours are real life people. Like, they doubled over.
They say it too. They say, "What the hell?" What the hell are you doing? Oh, that is so funny. I'm so glad somebody's having a great life.
Oh, it's just
for you.
Best. So let me tell you about our guest that we're having on today. You're going to be very excited to talk with her. Her name is Tisha Richmond, and she wrote the book, Make Learning Magical. And if I could remind you, we wrote an article in ASCA called Movement, Music, and Magic. And we spoke at ASCA about movement, music, and magic. And so I found her book after we did our session. And really, I wish we had found it before, because we could have just read straight from it.
The book, or I would have had her and dropped you.
And that
like a hot potato.
Yes. So I'm
So
excited.
yay, I'm excited.
Yeah. Jinx.
Let's let her in.
All right. Sounds good.
Let her into the studio.
Please don't embarrass me.
She's
You're
in the
so
green
weird.
room. Oh,
Hey,
and she's
isn't she
cute
adorable?
too.
Oh my
She's
goodness.
so cute.
I'm so excited that we finally get to chat.
Laura has been so excited to have you on because she says you're our people,
Oh,
meaning you like to add a little extra oomph into everything you do.
I do. I can tell already that you're my people. So
Aw.
that's so honored to be a part of your podcast and to meet you both. This will be fun.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you for being on.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are, what you do.
Yes, absolutely. So I am Tisha Richmond and I live in Southern Oregon, so the very bottom of the state, right over the California border. And I have been in education a little over 25 years. Most of those years have been in family and consumer science and career and technical education. As a culinary teacher, had a little bit of interior design in that as well, which was super fun to teach. And then the last 4 years, I have been in a central office role. And my position has been a little different each year. The last 3 years, my title was Tech Integration Specialist. And this year, it has morphed a little bit to Student Engagement and Professional Development Specialist, which really kind of encompasses the same area. It just, I think, is more of a perspective shift where I'm not just the how to do tech and how to integrate it into instruction, but how can we really amplify learning and empower our students. And sometimes that involves technology and sometimes it doesn't. And so it has been a journey, an adventure, especially the last 4 years, the last 2 years as we have navigated this pandemic and how we've had to shift so much to bring technology into our classrooms and learning, whether that's remote or in a brick and mortar classroom. It's been a wild ride, but I absolutely love what I do. I'm passionate about education, and it's just so wonderful to be connected with people across the world. I mean, I've learned so much just from engaging in conversations like this because we are all better together.
Absolutely. And I think that is one of the great things that came out of this. Gosh, I hate to even say anything good comes out of it, but I guess when life gives you lemons, find the lemonade or make lemonade, not find the lemonade, make lemonade. And it has opened up, and Laura and I were talking about this earlier today, just talking about something totally different, but just how our worlds have opened up. People, we see now that we can get to know people and work with one another, collaborate with one another all across the world. And so that has been a good thing, So we knew it was coming, but it's been sped up, I think.
It has, and that's really part of my story. Back in 2014, I talk about that in my book, about how I was at this point in education where I was just burnt out. I was dreaming about, I want to, become a barista and perfect the art of making a latte and just concentrate on making that pretty foam on top of my, on top of lattes. And it's kind of funny to talk about now, but it really was where I was at. I was just like, I just don't know that I can do this anymore. And that year I really started to discover that there was this world beyond my little district in Southern Oregon. I knew that, but really to open up my world to this professional learning network of educators from across the world that could look at education maybe a little differently than I did and help me see things in a new way and realize that, just because I'm a culinary arts teacher, that doesn't mean that I can only learn from other culinary arts teachers. I can learn from counselors and from ELA teachers and PE teachers and science teachers and administrators. And I can take some of the things that they're doing and bring that into my world and make it my own. And it really completely changed my educational journey. And I just became so inspired and challenged to make learning the best that it can possibly be for the students that I serve. And I'm just so grateful that, my eyes were opened up to that. And I think about the parallels right now where it's different. Like when I was burnt out on education, I was not in the middle of a pandemic, right? There's a lot of differences with that scenario back when I was burnt out in education and the scenario that educators are facing today in this pandemic. But I know that a huge part of me finding that joy and passion for education again was really finding that network, and that to realize I wasn't alone. Like I did not need to live in a silo. I didn't need to only connect and communicate with the people that were surrounding me in my physical space. I could find my people right beyond. And it was so life-giving to me. And I love that now more and more educators are finding that too, finding that there are people beyond their physical space that they can connect with and be inspired by and challenged by. It's a beautiful thing.
You were ahead of this curve that a lot of people now are falling into, of this opening up of getting to know people and collaborating with people. But that's interesting that you were out of gas and you just got like you were toward the end, and I think people are really gonna. I know listeners can resonate because you get to that point where you are dreaming of that foam. Just if I could just do, something that I can control, or,
Right.
different that's not so stressful maybe. So I think a lot of people can relate to that. But sometimes it's just being re-inspired or reinventing ourselves.
Mm.
So you stayed in education and you decided to write this book, right? Or is that how that happened?
Right. Well, it's been this wild chain of events and connections. It really was in that same year that I was thinking about leaving education, that this set of iPads came into my classroom. It was a set of iPads I really didn't want at the time. It was a regional grant that we received. All the culinary teachers in my region were bringing these iPads into our classrooms. And it would have been probably a really exciting thing for most teachers. But at the point I was in my educational journey, it was just another thing that was overwhelming. And I didn't know what to do with them. I had an iPad of my own, but that was totally different than bringing an iPad into a culinary arts hands-on classroom. And I didn't know what to do, but part of that funding was to get training. And so I went to this conference. It was an innovation conference. It was in Austin, Texas. And at this conference, they were sharing out all of these amazing things that you could do in education. And I was just completely blown away. I didn't realize these things existed. And most of it was revolved around technology, but there were some things that didn't, like sketchnoting. I had never heard of sketchnoting before. I had never heard of the term gamification before. These were all totally new concepts to me. And then in addition to that, at this conference, people were sharing out Twitter handles. And I thought, what? Like, what is this? Like, I didn't realize that Twitter was used in education. I thought it was kind of silly. Like people just shared out what they ate for breakfast. Like educators use Twitter. And it was just a new concept for me. And so, through that experience of seeing what was possible, seeing that there was all of these things in education that I hadn't even heard of or tapped into, and then realizing that these social spaces were being used to connect and collaborate, it was just kind of like this light bulb moment. Like, wow, there is something here that is exciting to tap into. And so when I came home from that conference that summer, I started to follow people on Twitter. I started to take some of these apps and these different ideas, things like gamification that I had heard about at this conference. And I started to process that and think about, okay, what could this look like in my classroom? How could I start following these educators and paying more attention to what they're doing and then bring that into my world? And so that just, it lit a fire in me. It sparked this little bit of excitement. And I went back that fall and I started to try some of the things. And I ended up going to another conference. It was kind of another part of the story is that being on Twitter, I entered a contest to go to this conference called Miami Device in Miami, Florida. And I won. I won this contest.
Wow.
And I went to this other innovation conference. And it was at that conference that I really connected with educators that really became part of my professional learning network. I went to dinner with them and we talked and we stayed connected after the conference. And that just kind of took that journey to another level. And it was actually at that conference, I met an educator by the name of Michael Matera. And Michael was not an author at the time. He is now, but he was really into gamification. And he actually was facilitating a session at that conference on gamification. And I didn't go to it. I happened to connect with him in a lunch line and he was talking about a session that I just missed. And I was so intrigued by this idea of bringing gamification into your classroom. And I thought, I love to do little chop challenges and things like that with my students. This whole idea of layering those concepts and ideas over an entire semester of content, was just mind blowing. And so after that conference, I stayed connected with him. That next year, he wrote a book called Explore Like a Pirate. It was all on gamification. And I started playing around with these ideas of gamification in my own class. And it just shows how one thing leads to another. But each one of those things was this kind of step of courage for me. Yeah. It was a step out of my comfort zone. These were all things that I was not at all comfortable with, but I was curious and I was intrigued on how could this change what learning looked like for my students? How could I create a learning environment that's not just engaging for my kids, but it's empowering for my kids? And, there's a lot of fails. There's a lot of things that totally flopped and that I either reiterated or threw away altogether. There were definitely moments in that journey where I was like, these iPads, I just want to toss them because I'm done. This is frustrating because I was at that point in my journey, though I was a burnt out educator, I was pretty dialed in. I had a routine, I had a flow of the way that my classroom looked, and it was working fairly well. I was a little bored. I was disenchanted with education, but it was working okay. And I had routines and procedures that, for the most part, were effective. And so to disrupt that and to upset those routines and procedures was super scary and super uncomfortable. But I started to notice a shift in how my students were responding. And I started to notice that students were beginning to own their learning and they were having fun learning. There was joy in learning. And that to me was exciting. And even though the learning wasn't perfect, my teaching wasn't perfect, it was changing the dynamic of my classroom, and I couldn't get enough of it. I thought, wow, I just want to continue to rethink what learning looks like and continue to try new things because it's making a difference. It really is making a difference. And my joy for teaching and learning was starting to return. I was starting to get excited about teaching and learning again. And I think that is a contagious thing. When you are joyful and you experience that for yourself, then it's it sprinkles out on everybody around you, right? And so that started happening as well.
That's what I was thinking as I was listening to your story. It seems like you were making learning magical, but you were making teaching magical again too, just in what you were doing.
Yeah, it did. I mean, it really shifted the way that I looked at teaching.
Yeah.
And it, yeah, absolutely. I think that really that's the beginning, right? Like when you can start shifting and make your teaching magical, then that's the catalyst for magical learning to happen with your students. It's a really, I think, a good point and something that's important for us all to think about as teachers is that shift in how students learn starts with us.
Mm-hmm.
It does.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I want to hear more about the book and but first I just want to talk about a little bit about and I think Laura and I have had a couple of aha moments. Your aha moment, I totally could feel that because I know those aha moments. We've had those aha moments where it's kind of shakes what you thought you knew and you're like, this is there's more here. And I think you know, for us realizing that education sometimes is the very last institutional to pick up on where kids are at the moment. And you know, when we really started to look at where kids are going now as far as their future, what it may or may not look like in the future, what they're doing now, and what they want to do now, and that we have all these opportunities. And so I think for us, that was a big aha moment, and being very intentional about preparing in a way that was memorable. And sometimes that's plugged in and sometimes that's unplugged, as you said. So, you know, I think when you realize I've been doing, like you said, those routines and procedures, they can work, and you think you're really getting somewhere, but you can get so much further. And it sounds like that's what your book may inspire others. So tell us a little bit about the premise of or some of the chapters or some of the book.
Yeah, absolutely. So Make Learning Magical is really my manifesto. It's how I went from an educator that was burnt out, ready to make lattes, to being an educator that's more passionate about education than I've ever been. And so the story kind of starts out there, and then what it does is it breaks down magical into an acronym. And so the M starts for memorable beginnings. A is for authenticity and agency. G is for gamified experiences. I is for innovation. C is for creativity, collaboration, and curiosity. A is for authentic audience, and L is for legacy. And in each of those, so each of those letters is really a chapter of my book. And really, when I thought about that word magical, I was really trying to think about what are the components that really changed what my classroom looked and felt like what were those things. And I started really thinking about it, and those were the areas that really changed and transformed my classroom into one that, you know, students were once engaged in, like they were learning, but it shifted from not just being engaged in learning, but being empowered in learning and really owning it. And so I wrote the book really with all educators in mind. I was a family and consumer science CTE teacher. And so some of the examples that I share in my book are, you know, they're from that lens because that's what I taught. But I really wanted to write it for all educators. Educators that really were looking to find ways to create a magical learning experience for students. And so I hope that all educators can connect with some of those stories and some of those things that I experienced as a teacher. And I hope that for some educators, it might be just something that helps maybe be that catalyst to become joyful about teaching again. Because I know right now, especially, it's hard. I am in a district that the teachers they're struggling. It's been so long and so difficult over the past 2 years, and the obstacles and the challenges that they've experienced is wild. And so, I hope that the book resonates with others, and they can find a little bit of joy in this teaching and educational journey that we're all on.
I think they will. And Laura and I have talked about just the thing that you're saying about educators. I have heard so many people that come to me as a school counselor and adults, and they're ready for a change. And it's almost like reevaluating what we're doing, and some people are ready for a change. And so sometimes it doesn't have to be a complete change. It could just be, and we want educators to stay in education. So if this book helps reinvent or inspire, and I tell people to look past just what you're doing, because you can feel like you're just in this vacuum. And that's when Laura and I got together, is when we decided there is more, that what we're doing here, there's more that out there. And it was like a shot in the arm for us to reinvent ourselves and to look like it, we can help in a bigger space. And it sounds like, that's what you're doing. And a lot of people need to look at that and say, maybe it's not time to throw in the towel, but to re-look at what I'm doing.
Right. Well, that really was the reason why I wanted to write it, is I just wanted to make a difference in some way. I mean, I definitely changed the trajectory of my journey, by just connecting with my professional learning network, stepping out and trying new things, and building my courage. And all of those experiences have led me to where I'm at. And I just want to bring hope to others. This education is an amazing profession to be in, but it's not an easy one. There's a lot of stressors. It's hard work. And so I hope to bring joy and hope to others, for sure.
I know, as a counselor reading your book, I think educators are just creative people in general. I think we have to be. But what your book did for me, and I can imagine it doing for other people, is I guess when you are inspired by a creative person or by creativity, then it becomes contagious. And so your creativity and your ideas started sparking ideas for me, even though we're school counselors and you're talking about Chopped and, things that you did in your classroom. There were still things that I took away, and I was like, oh my goodness, we can do that. That would be, we could do that. So, what have you seen since writing your book? What sort of things have people mentioned to you, or like what other ideas have you had since the book?
Yeah, well, gosh, it brings so much joy to my heart when an educator will reach out and say that they've read it, and say that they are trying some of those things in their classroom. And what you said is what brings me the most joy, when something that I shared is something that just sparks an idea and launches them in their own journey, right? Because we do need each other, and we each have our own magic. I share that all the time. We have a magic that's all our own. And so my magic is not going to be your magic, or, not going to be the next person's magic, but maybe something in the magic that worked for me will spark the magic in you. And that is amazing, because none of us have the exact situation. We're not in the same schools. We have different students, even from semester to semester. I had a completely different group of students, and some things worked one semester and I had to iterate and change for the next semester. So it was never the same. And so just hearing from other educators that are trying some of these ideas, whether it's around gamification or maybe it's different ways to spark creativity in their students and have them demonstrate their learning in new ways, whether it's just getting them excited about connecting with a professional learning network. For me, it was Twitter, but it may not be Twitter for somebody else. Maybe it's Instagram. Maybe it's a Facebook community. It doesn't matter. It's the fact that you are connecting with others. And, I am continuously inspired and challenged to learn new things and bring in new ideas. And so many that have connected with me through the book, I've been inspired by them, and I look at the things they're doing and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. Like my mind is absolutely blown. And, it's true. We all are better together. I say that over and over again, but it's so true. And as an educational community, there's no end to the possibilities that we can provide for students when we can share the things that we're doing with each other. And it's really exciting. It's an exciting time to be in education, really. It's a difficult time to be in education, but it's also a really exciting time.
You're right. It is exciting because things are changing every second. And so what's next? What's the next book for you?
Oh my
You got
goodness.
any ideas up there in your head? What are you thinking?
I don't know. Of course, I'm always thinking about writing and thinking about, thinking about what's next. And I don't know that I have an exact book in my mind. I just am so enjoying this journey and where it's taken me. I now am at a district level, and I've had an opportunity to zoom out of my culinary arts classroom and see education from a completely different perspective. I get to see education from the administrator point of view. I'm able to see education in elementary. I'm able to see education at middle school and high school. I've had an opportunity to connect with amazing educators from around the world through my own podcast, through webinars and things. And so I just love that my perspective just keeps, broadening. Like I'm able to really continually grow. And I think sometimes it's the more you learn, the more you realize how much more there is to learn. Like there's so many different, parts of education to get excited about. And so I don't know. The answer is I'm not sure what's next.
That's exciting though.
Yeah, it is.
And I will say, Laura and I, one of the first podcasts that we ever did was with she came to my school and she was from Sweden, Laura.
Oh yeah.
She was from Sweden and she came to my school to learn more about gamification. And that's when I realized really worldwide how big that was, especially in other countries sometimes like Sweden. And so that was a really big thing and for her, and she wanted to come into America and watch that in action. And that we had that going on in our school is the gamification. And if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, you need to look into that because it can be a game changer for a lot of. But we did lose that podcast. That never aired, did it, Laura?
No, it didn't.
We did spend some time with her and talk to her about some things going over there in her country, and that was really when I realized that gamification was a big deal. Yeah, we learned some more about that from her, so that's exciting.
Yeah,
but yeah, reaching out and making those networks across there are these people like yourself that get out of the box, and that's when it gets fun. When you really say, should I? And then you say, well, yeah, why not? Let's do this. Let's go for this. So let's go to Miami and
Right.
meet people. And sometimes it just takes making those new friends, and especially when you do that in a worldwide level or a national at least level. Not
Mhm.
everybody thinks the way you think or
Right.
does things the way that you do them, and that's when it really gets fun and interesting. So
Yeah.
thank you for inspiring us and giving us that shot in the arm. And our listeners, we're going to link the book. And what else, Laura? What else?
Yes. Do you have a preference on how they purchase your book?
The best place to find it is on Amazon. But if you go to Dave Burgess Consulting Incorporated, I think it's daveburgessconsulting.com. I think. I think that's the URL. You can search my book, and then you'll actually get a little free clip, like a little snippet of my book that you can read before you decide to purchase. If you want to kind of try it out and see what it's all about, you might want to check it out there first. And then there's a link to Amazon from that site that you can purchase it if you would like to.
Well, and I just want to say that it's full of ideas. Our listeners love like the toolbox type ideas where you can take it and implement it in your school. And what this book has are not only those ideas, but also the story to go with it. And it was an easy read. I loved just the personal aspect of it and how you shared so much of like real life in there with it. And so I would encourage everyone to go purchase this book. It was very good.
Thank you so much. That just means the world. I really, really appreciate it. It's been so fun to talk to you both. I've enjoyed this so much.
Yes, it's been great. Thank you for coming on.
Maybe we'll get to meet in person one day.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes, if you're in Alabama or if we go to Oregon, I can just pick out an outfit right now in my brain of what that would look like if I was going to Oregon.
I would love to go to Alabama. I have some distant family in Alabama. In fact, have you guys you know what a butternut flavoring, butternut cake?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's our family birthday cake, and it originated from a family recipe. And so we get the butternut because you can't really find it here, the butternut flavoring. So we order it. I think it's Watkins.
Yes.
And so we order that, and that is the only flavoring, the only kind of birthday cake we ever have in our family is the butternut cake.
Well, I really want one of these butternut cakes now that you talked about that. So that sounds good.
They're the best.
That sounds good. Thank you for being on.
Yes,
and
thank
we
you so
appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you so much.
Well, I know I'm going to be getting me a copy, or you never let me borrow anything from you because sometimes it doesn't get returned. So I'll buy my own copy.
It's that I usually purchase online versions from something called the World Wide Web.
The World Wide Web.
And so it's very difficult.
Do not even talk to me. I buy Audible and Kindle, and you are up on some kind of third-party crap site. Don't talk to me.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
I don't either. I've had a long day at school, and I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. But wow, she was really good.
She immediately started speaking our language, didn't she?
She did. Yeah. She was passionate, inspiring, and just it's an interesting how she was very close to just giving up in these iPads that she didn't want. It's just amazing how one thing leads to another thing, leads to another thing. And, I have been there. I so get it. And I think educators everywhere get that. It's just one more thing.
And it's funny because just today I saw a Facebook post where a news reporter from our local news channel in, close to where we live, they were asking for people who were either close to quitting their job or had just quit their job. And somebody commented and said, why do you want to talk to people who've quit their job? And she quoted the statistic and said, statistics show that like 70 to 80% of people are either quitting or have thought very seriously about quitting their job. And I just want to talk to them and find out what's behind that.
And I can attest to that. I told you, remember, I said, what's going on? They're coming in one after the other.
Yes.
And adults, And a lot of them have made those changes, and a lot of them have made career changes. Are, like one of my best friends, and it's not you, Laura, that I'm talking about.
Well, I'm hurt.
What? She's going to come one more week and she's going home. She's not even finishing out the year. So, and she's wonderful, but it's just whatever we've all gone through, it is causing us to rethink what we want our future to be. And I do think in education, it has been really difficult for educators. And I think I think we're tired. I think that we're tired. And I hope that this podcast helps. I hope we bring laughter to people, and that, inspiration, or, advocate for school counselors and educators, because we believe in it. And, we want to get through this together.
Well said. There's really nothing else I can add to that. That was perfect.
I know you can't be funny when I'm being so. I don't know. What am I being? Okay, now you're taking it too far.
All right.
Well, Laura, I would like to say that we have a new product that is it Hawk or is it Hawk? I'm going to Hawk the wares.
Does it matter? Because you're going to say what you want to say anyway.
I'm going to Hawk my wares.
Okay.
And I don't really know if that sounds, I don't know how that sounds, how that's coming across. But you and I both we have a bulletin board full of clipboards, just good old fashioned clipboards. And on each clipboard is things that students might come in and have an issue with. And sometimes it's not life shattering or life altering, but a student just needs a place to calm down, and maybe we're even with somebody else and they're needing an issue, whatever. But we have these clips.
May I take it to another level? And this is my sometimes incompetence as a counselor. When people come to me and they say, I'm having trouble with friends, I do what I like to call deer in the headlights counseling, where I look at them and think, what do I do?
Who am I?
How do I do my job? Especially after, I don't know, let's say an extended break.
Or I've had a big candy bar, and then I'm like, I'm zoned out. I don't know.
How about any day, Monday through Friday? You just never know when it might hit you.
Never know when you're just fresh out of ideas. Or a teacher can come to you and say, I'm having trouble with tattling or whatever. It's great to have these clipboards hanging on the wall, labeled anger, labeled bullying, labeled friendship, labeled what have you. And so we have had several people ask, because they've saw these on our walls before and have asked us about them. So we have put them on TPT, and I think that'd be helpful. I think it's something that would be helpful.
Yes. And we've had lots of people ask. And I know they help me every day. I've had them up there for 2 years, and they help me pretty much every day, really. So anyway, like you said, we are putting that out on our Teachers Pay Teachers store. So go check it out. We had a lot of requests for that. I shared it on our social media, I think last spring, and we had lots of people saying, where can I get this? How can I get this? And so here you go. You can go check it out now and see what you think. Speaking of our social media, you can follow us on Facebook. You can join our Instagram. You can join our email group so that you will not miss an email from us. And then don't forget to go on to our social media and drop some of your ideas on our social media posts about school counseling hacks that we have going on. Drop us an idea and be entered into a drawing for the book 50 Plus Tech Tools for School Counselors by our friends Steve Sharp and Angela Cleveland. And we will send you that book if we draw your name. Have I forgotten anything?
I don't think so. It went on and on. I just zoned out. I was gone. So whatever you said, I'm sure was fine.
Okay. Well, I hope you guys have listened more intently than Kim did. Have a good week.